Today, he runs a multi-billion dollar real estate platform by doing the opposite of the crowd.
Real estate, luckily, is about people. And I have studied people my entire life. All the greatest achievers in the world fail. And I found that the ones that ended up making it in any way, shape, or form are the ones that followed in the footsteps of the prophetic words of Phil Knight in Nike, which is
Just do it.
just do it.
As an entrepreneur with a global team, one of my biggest challenges was managing international payments. I was stuck with high fees, slow transfers, and endless complications. Whether it was paying my team in the Philippines or buying products from Japan, I tried multiple banks and services like PayPal, but nothing seemed to work. Then I found Wise. The savings have been huge, and transfers that used to take days now happen in hours. It's fast, simple, and has become a vital part of my business strategy. If you're not using Wise for international payments, you're missing out on a game changer. Click on the link in the description to get started with Wise today. Most people think risk is starting with nothing. Ari Rastegar, wait, hang on a second. Is that how you pronounce it?
Ari Rastegar.
Rastegar. Okay, cool. Ari Rastegar thinks the real risk is playing it safe when you can see what's broken. He walked away from law school with a $3,500 student loan, not because he had certainty, but because he trusted his ability to think clearly when others couldn't. Today, he runs a multi-billion dollar real estate platform by doing the opposite of the crowd, buying when others freeze and waiting when others rush, and treating failure as information instead of identity. This conversation is about how to make decisions when there are no guarantees, why most people misunderstand risk, and what actually separates conviction from recklessness. I'm Linda Vogt, and this is Inspired by Success. Let's welcome to the show, Ari Rastegar.
Hi, Linda.
I'm so excited to have you on. Like, there's so much I want to dig deep into, like your story and all that. But tell us, you started with 3,500, which sounds terrifying, but it's also freeing. How did you do?
It was a lot
How
of
did you
money. It was a lot of money. Well, look, I started. We talked a little bit about this offline. So I don't know entirely when this journey started, but at one point I got the itch to be an entrepreneur. I think when I was garage sailing with my mother in elementary school, and started kind of making deals and buying little trinkets. And I didn't grow up with much. I'm very fortunate. I had my health and had a loving father, and had some great. Being in America was certainly a huge benefit, but we were definitely lower middle class from an income standpoint, in a lot of different ways. So garage sailing, going to neighborhood garages and buying little things, then coming back once a month, having a garage sale at our house, and is where I kind of got the itch to be an entrepreneur. So I think it's been in my blood longer than I initially thought. But I was a very mediocre student. I had a horrible speech impediment growing up. So I had a stutter and a lisp. So I had to go to 7 years of speech therapy to really learn how to speak effectively. So I was a very kind of a self-conscious, awkward kid, to be perfectly honest. Wasn't really necessarily good at anything, very average across the board. No, nothing extraordinary about me by any stretch of the imagination. Um, and in high school, I worked at Johnny Rockets Burgers, this little spot that's kind of like a 1950s kind of style burger place, flipping burgers, and barely got out of high school. My grades were a joke. I went to two community colleges before transferring into university. I did graduate top of my class when it was all said and done, but delivering pizzas, making $2.86 an hour, and then getting into law school and all the things that come along with that. I had this, in hindsight, it sounds pretty crazy, but I had this crazy idea to buy a little lot to build a single family home. It was 2007, and it looked like everything that went up for sale was being sold. And as I drove back and forth to school, signs said buys, for sale, sold, for sale, sold, for sale, sold. And I used the rest of my scholarship money and a little bit of loan from one of my friend's fathers to buy a little lot for $3,500. It was not only all the money I had, it was more money than, more money than I had. And I partnered with a local builder and spent my mornings at 5 o'clock in the morning building on a construction site. And then, somehow getting my way into law school, tracking mud through all the hallways. And the dean of the law school at the time is still a very good friend of mine. He's like, what the fuck is this guy doing? He's like, you're walking in a work booth, you're studying till 3 o'clock in the morning. Like, do you ever sleep? Um, and we built the house, sold it, made some money. And instead of saving the money, I bought the lot right down the street and did it again. Built it,
Mm.
sold it, and then 2008 hit and the entire real estate market went to zero. So I decided I better finish law school and pass the bar exam. So I did, and I ended up practicing law for a couple of years. And my journey took me to a bunch of roundabout ways before finding real estate again. Starting this firm 11 years ago. And now we've invested in 38 cities, 13 states, 7 different asset classes. Um, we own industrial facilities, single family home for rent, commercial buildings, office buildings, apartment complexes, hundreds and hundreds of acres across Texas and across the United States.
What made you go all in just on real estate though? Was it, some people, entrepreneurs, sometimes they get the shiny syndrome where they find different opportunities. You obviously found an opportunity in real estate and you stuck with it. But what made you
Yeah,
keep going,
I don't
especially, and then
I don't think it
expanding?
was that strategic. I wish I could tell you it was that strategic. It definitely wasn't. I think there was a little bit of thought, but it was more just this itch. I think this hunger of like I wanted to do something. Like I was sick of being poor. I wanted to do something interesting. I was an English literature major in undergrad, and so I basically read the best books in the world. For a living, like that was my job. And when you read the best books in the world, you're getting a history lesson, you're getting a psychology lesson. And I've studied achievement, the greatest achievers in the world, as a hobby my entire life, whether sports athletes, business people, chess players, kings, queen, you know, uh, scientists, you name it, studying them. And I found that the ones that ended up making it in any way, shape, or form are the ones that followed in the footsteps of the prophetic words of Phil Knight in Nike, which is
Just do it.
just do it. You know,
I
and,
love that
and,
story. Yeah,
you
that
know,
book, his book is a really,
it's so
so good.
good.
I think
It's
that,
so good.
yeah, with the books that you read, that book in particular, you can feel his energy in the books because I love books myself and I love learning about successful people. But that book, it's just like some books you can actually feel the energy in the words, and the stories were amazing as well. That's, I think, yeah. But speaking about books, which like that would be an ultimate career because for me, learning and reading books, I get really excited when I get a new book, and so there's been so many different books. I love learning about different things about people, spirituality, self development, and business. But
You and me both. Abraham Lincoln said, "My only true friend is the person that buys me a book that I've never read."
wow. And which books are your ultimate favorite books like that?
Oh, geez. I'm a
Everything.
lover of books like you. It depends on the category. It depends on the day.
Okay,
Um,
business. Let's go business first. Let's go favorite business books that have helped you.
Favorite business books. I think Principles by Ray Dalio was
Mm,
a enormous. I mean, of course, there's some classics like The Intelligent Investor was a huge one. Obviously, Rich Dad Poor Dad when I was a kid. I mean, there's so many in so many areas. But in recent years, as an adult, I would say, or an aspiring adult, still try to keep a very curious mind and try to unlearn the bad habits from before. Picasso used to say that it took him 4 years to learn how to paint like Raphael, but a lifetime to paint like a child. And I think that that same concept of innovation, of curiosity, of of fun curiosity that if we continue to have as business people, as parents, as individuals, has so much fulfillment where we can spend our life, studying the science of success, which is very much programmatic. There's a ways to become successful, but living a beautiful, meaningful life, living in a beautiful state, is very much an art. And and they're in constant having growth, because what Ray says in principles, and I got to meet Ray and spend some time with him, and he's the one that actually told me to learn how to meditate early in my career, which I meditate every single day. It's a huge part of my life, but principles he initially published on his website before it was actually a book. And a friend of mine at the time recommended it to me, and I printed it out in PDF and read it, and obviously read it when the book came out. But understanding business from that perspective of understanding just how certain markets move, and that history doesn't repeat itself, but it sure does rhyme. And understanding asset allocation, non-correlated investment strategies, how you bucket investments. I was just a dumb English major lawyer. Like, I never took a business class, you know, before, but real estate luckily is about people, and I did, and I have studied people my entire life. And so when you look at these, huge sites, these hundreds of acres sites that we buy that used to be farms in areas that are growing, we can look at it of, what would the people need here in a city that's growing like Austin, Texas? Like, what if we took a farm and we put an elementary school and put a park and build single family homes and apartments? And, how could we, look at what building a community and like the urban planning. I'm a huge student of Singapore. I've studied, the history of Singapore for many, many years, and how they took this city state that was basically, you know,
It was like
just
drug and like
yeah, drug induced. It was just an absolute abomination, and in a short period of 50 years became this massive metropolis, this financial hub, this green friendly, I mean, just this unbelievable score that shows you what can happen over a few 5 short decades. And so yeah, so the human element is a huge part for me, because if you read the greatest novels in the book, if you read, Dostoevsky or Chekhov or Dickens, or pick an author, you're also getting a study in the culture. You're getting a study in the vernacular and the type of words that we use, the slang that was used, the cultural idiosyncrasies. You're learning human behavior, and so you really get a master class in these things. And as I said, in real estate, when you touch as many asset classes as we do, from industrial to data centers to offices to apartments, you start to see, little trends and similarities about how people work, how they play, where they live, the things that make cities sticky and make people want to be there, and what moves businesses there. And you can start to make these, educated decisions of what's going to happen next. Um, and it's a very fulfilling thing to take, what was just a piece of land, and take a bunch of people with a common vision together and then get it on a blueprint, not unlike having a dream and writing a goal, and then building this thing on paper, and then literally watching it come out of the ground, and then watch families and people move in and build their lives within it. Is so, so, so wildly fulfilling, that for me, real estate has nothing to do. There's contractors and construction workers, and that are so much more, know more than I do about the mechanics of the nuts and the bolts and that part of it. But for us, the development process of turning a house into a home, of, seeing, tenants as these small businesses, and seeing, people that lease our apartments as neighbors, and seeing this human element has been one of the most fulfilling things in my life, and why we continue to have an insatiable appetite, to continue to grow, continue to build, and continue to help be custodians of community.
wow, that's really fascinating. And you've built something amazing at this platform. So, I want to hear some of the stories, some failure stories of, how you got to where you are, and what are the biggest failures. And I mean, we learn from the failures. And Elon Musk says that if you're not failing enough, you're not doing it right. Well, that's not his quote, but
Yeah,
I
yeah. If
love
things if
to
things aren't if
challenge it.
things aren't breaking, you're not trying hard enough.
Yeah, yeah, that exactly. So, can you share some stories of some of your really biggest challenges and failures, and what your learnings were, because I believe in timing, divine timing, and whatnot, and they're all lessons that we will learn. So
They are,
just
they are. And it doesn't, when you're an entrepreneur or you're building, anything meaningful and basically anything really long lasting, and that can be being as a parent, building a family, you have to have an incredible pain tolerance,
mm,
because pain and suffering and failure, we use these words, and we immediately have this negative connotation. We immediately say, oh my God, this is so bad. But in fact, problems are the gifts that we grow from. And the problems and the challenges and how we signify them and how we approach them is what makes all the difference in the world. One person sees a problem, another person sees a challenge. And that's a huge difference that, just in general. And I wish I could say that I could speak about that so eloquently throughout my entire life. And that's just not the case. I was very angry. I was very frustrated. I was very impatient. And, why me? Why is this happening to me? And one of the biggest mindset shifts that revolutionized my life was at a Tony Robbins conference, seminar about 10 years ago. And he explained that life is not happening to you, life is happening for
for
you. And I
you,
remember the moment that he said that on stage, and it just completely floored me. And, life is not happening to you, life is happening from you. And that everything that I was seeing is a reflection of me, and the people that were around were these representations of things that I either needed to learn, or they were, complements to some sort of right piece of thinking. And I started to see the people around me as instructors and teachers, and especially the triggers of, getting triggered and feeling a certain way, or feeling hurt, or feeling offended, or having my ego bruised, like trying to have a metacognitive moment of saying, what else could this mean? Like, why am I
mm,
thinking that? Like, why did that upset me so much? Why am I angry? Like, what? And then start to think about my thoughts, and those failures of, I can tell you countless business failures. I can tell you about how I, started one of the biggest entertainment companies in the history of the Super Bowl, and the Black Eyed Peas, and we had the Black Eyed Peas, which was the halftime show, perform. We signed Sports Illustrated as as our main title sponsor. It was in Dallas, town that I grew up in. It was the biggest show, biggest sporting event in the history of the state of Texas. We sold tables for $50,000. I literally went to sleep a millionaire, after, coming out of law school with millions of dollars in sales. And then the biggest ice storm in the history of Texas hit the party and destroyed all the profitability of everything. Went to sleep with millions of dollars, and I woke up negative 800,000, the next
wow,
day. And so I say that to you because the intellect and the grit and the resilience that it took to get those things done, to sign those acts, to start this company, to move to New York City, to put it together. We didn't sleep for a year, what it felt like, and um, accomplish these things. And then the unthinkable happened, the thing that was unplanned for.
yeah,
And it completely leveled me. I wrote about this in my book, The Gift of Failure, because it taught me something. And at the moment, I had no introspection. I was very depressed, very upset, just like, how could this happen to me? God, why me? That kind of, moment. And it was so short-sighted because, one, if it had worked, I probably would have stayed in the entertainment business and missed out on the life of fulfillment that I think that I was destined to actually do. One, so that door that closed, my Jewish
hmm
friends have a beautiful quote, that I think about often. It says, "Man plans, God laughs." And yeah, and so I had planned, I had thought, but what it taught me about investing, and what it taught me as I started to read, books like The Principles, and reading, Warren Buffett's annual shareholder letters for the past 50 years, reading Bezos's letters, reading all these different things, is this incredible focus on risk management. And that sounds like a bunch of jargon, but amateurs amateurs focus on how much money they can make.
mm,
Professionals focus on all the ways they could lose money.
wow,
And so in that moment, I realized that my eyes had had so many, dollar signs in it that we thought we're just all about making money. It was all about us, all about what we could make, what I could make. And then I forgot to obsess about my customer. I forgot to plan for the things that could have gone wrong. I forgot to save enough cash in the capital reserve accounts. I forgot to set up enough money for payroll and the consultants and our waitresses and the workers. And I was so obsessed with myself, so drawn in my own ego, so enamored by this red carpet, and this
Wow.
limelight and every major celebrity in the world around. And then all of a sudden, this ice storm just punched me straight in the teeth. And it was very easy to say, well, who's going to plan for an ice storm? Like, how do you know
Mm.
that an ice storm is going to hit Texas? It's never even happened before. But that would be, again, a huge mistake because planning for the unplannable, mitigating risk, keeping cash reserves. There is systems as professional investors that we can plan for the unplannable actually, and I'm so happy that it happened with a couple $1 million and not with a couple $1 billion. When you have investor capital, when you have public pension plans and insurance companies and people's livelihoods and homes at risk, and banks and lenders and contractors that all have jobs and families, that I was able to have that incredible gift to learn that strategy of risk management, to learn to plan for the unplannable, to learn to focus above all on my customers and my clients and take myself out of the equation, and make it about the mission, not about a singular person. And all of that happened when I was in my late 20s. So now, as a 43-year-old CEO, looking at the companies we build, I own 100% of my company, and I feel like we're just getting warmed up. I mean, this is just the very beginning. I feel like my career hasn't even started yet. Like this is just all an appetizer to what we're able to do and what we're able to give and contribute. So it went from this me focus to we. It went from contribution. It went from thinking about what I could do to how I could contribute even more. And what happens when you focus on contribution? There's a magical elixir in the air that pulls you to something, that willpower, that your push energy is nothing compared to when you're pulled to a mission that's bigger than you, pulled to something, to do something for others and whatever that is. And one of the best logistical apparatuses ever invented is business. And, in
Mm.
business is the way that we use commerce to deliver goods and services that change people's lives, that make people happy, that either feed them or entertain them or house them or clothe them. And there's nothing more holy than taking a product that people absolutely need and want and providing it to them at a reasonable price, providing to them seamlessly, frictionless, in such a way that they can enjoy it and enhance their lives. And if you use that properly, there's no charity in the world that can compete with a business that's actually serving people. Because at the end of the day, no one wants charity. I don't care if you're dead broke. I've been rich. I've been poor. Nobody wants charity. They want empowerment. They want to be given a skill or taught something. They don't want to be demeaned or humiliated. And by running a business the right way with the right level of integrity, you can do magical things.
That's beautiful. And you mentioned taking yourself out and of the business. Like obviously, there's systems that you need to put in place and hiring the right people. But you seem to have a fulfilling life. And tell us the secrets of that, because a lot of, I interview people and I hear stories how certain people that built like incredibly wealthy people that have built successful companies, they hit their goals and then they don't feel fulfilled. And
Well, they're not the same thing. So success and fulfillment are two very different things. Success is a science. There's a formula. Like I'll give you an example. If you want to get a college degree, you want to get a degree in engineering, you get a syllabus. You go to a school, it tells you take these classes. If you take this prerequisite, this class, and if you complete all the classes in 4 years, you get a degree and you learn how to be an engineer. That's success. Okay.
mhm.
Fulfillment is an art. And so people chase success and chase money thinking it's going to make them fulfilled. Another backwards way of looking at that is when you get angry, and I've been very angry. I was very angry most of my life. I'm not anymore. But anger is like swallowing poison, expecting someone else to die.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a similar thing. People chase money when they're actually after freedom. They chase money because they're actually after love, and they think that if they have money that they're going to experience connection, that they're going to experience love, and that's just the wrong outcome for that particular. Is success a beautiful thing? Absolutely. Can it create so much joy and happiness? Absolutely. But there's a difference between rich and wealthy. Rich is loud. Rich is about things. Wealth is quiet. Wealth does things in the shadows that doesn't need to be spoken about. So when you're after fulfillment, you have to have purpose. You have to have
Mm-hmm.
something that is bigger than you. You have to have growth and contribute. It has different value systems. And so just there's a lot of people that have fulfillment that are broke, and they'll tell you they don't have. So you need both.
Mm.
There's plenty of people. Ask a public school teacher, ask a public school teacher in California that makes barely enough money, of how fulfilling their life is, about the children they get to help, the things they get to do. Would they like to have more money? Absolutely. But entrepreneurs and type A personalities still somehow are brainwashed into thinking that money creates fulfillment and happiness. The only way that money on itself can make you happy is if you give enough of it away.
Yep,
That's
exactly.
it.
Yeah.
And if you do, you can definitely feel some sort of happiness. But they're different systems, they're different goals, they're different attributes. And like I said, one is a science, one is an art. And the
Mm.
art part, the science, you can teach someone science. I can teach you how to go become an engineer. I can teach you how to, coach you to get into university in Sydney and then go to engineering, and you come out with an engineering degree and you'll be a electrical engineer. Nobody can coach you how to be fulfilled. That's
Mm.
so personal to you. There's one you. You have one fingerprint. There's one person that has this genetic sequencing that you have, and that person has to go through their journey to find that level of fulfillment. If they have the courage and the privilege, because a lot of people don't end up having the privilege because of health issues or other problems, or they're in areas that don't have liberties, and these privileges have been stolen from them. But if you have the privilege of the basic liberties of being a human being, and have your limbs and have your health, which is a lot of ifs. A lot of people, there's a billion people without running water. We were talking about Vietnam before this. The level of poverty that's in Vietnam would astonish most average Americans, of what the base pay is. In Vietnam, a good job pays 450 American dollars a month. And so this type of money is incomparable to these first world countries. Beautiful country, beautiful culture, beautiful people. um, but nobody can do that for you. If you want the ease of mind, it must done yourself. If you want a peaceful home, that's something you must do yourself. If you want a healthy body, it's something you must do yourself. There's other things people can do for you, but these are things that must be earned. And the gratification and the reward is the peace and the fulfillment that you get afterwards.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there because, like, as an entrepreneur, I've got big goals to become successful. But what really fulfills me is to be able to know that I can make an impact on, even on a small scale, like all my team and my family, and to be able to provide.
That's
And not only that,
beautiful.
yeah, and
That's
putting,
beautiful. This is beautiful. This
yeah,
is not
when
a
you,
small scale. This is beautiful.
well, that, yeah, because you just see it. Like yesterday, we had Vietnamese New Year. We had a dinner with the family, and all the waiters. I didn't prepare. I didn't know, but I had to get changed, and just giving them tips, each and every one of them, even if it was small, but it just brought a smile to their faces. And
That's
it's like
beautiful.
that fulfills me as well. And I think when you know that you can make an impact and a difference in people's lives, and you have a purpose and a goal to get there, I think that for me is what fulfills me. But
Well,
what
for you,
fulfills
well, for
you?
you and me both, for you and me both, and I think there's universal truths, that go into, there's values that go into that, because giving is receiving,
Mm,
there's something that happens. Our creator, in their infinite wisdom, created a method where the more that you give, the more that you receive. And And there's something to be said also about how you fill your own cup up to be able to give more. There's a boundary, because some people give to a point of depletion. They give
Mm.
from a place of insecurity. They give from a place of vanity. And the sentiment and the intention behind giving also matters. So those that want to truly give, I think taking the time when you're in an airplane, and we've all heard the safety lecture, and they say put the mask over your face before you put it over young children. And there's a lot of wisdom in that statement, because if you don't put it on your own face, you could pass out before you could help other people. And this experiment of life is very much the same, that how we fill our own cup, how we make ourselves strong and resilient so that we give, is a very important component. And I'm no expert at any of this shit. I'm just living a life. The only thing that I can tell you any of this is from the things that I've screwed up and all the mistakes that I've made along the way. Only the person the only a person that can write a book about failure that has failed more than the average person to be able to tell you anything about failure. And I've experienced those failures in health and business and life and family, in emotion, and in so many different ways. And now for me, my definition of failure is learning how to win, how we learn as humans, because anybody that learns anything specialized fails.
Mm.
Go watch a young kid learn how to play the piano. Go watch a kid learn how to walk. They stand up
Mm.
and they fall.
Mhm. Mhm.
They
Yeah.
fail.
Yeah.
And you look at it in sports, you look at it in life. And at one point, my father is Iranian. Okay. And Iranians, believe in higher level education. It's in the value system. So my father made me become a lawyer, even though I didn't want to be a lawyer. Was there wisdom in that? Yes. Am I happy that I did go to law school now? Absolutely. But that wasn't what I wanted at the moment. That was something that he wanted. But when we go through schooling, we're reprimanded for not being perfect. Life rewards the greatest achievers in the world for failing, but staying, pausing, learning why they failed, and going after it again, and getting
Mm.
up and doing it again. School, if you fail a class, can hold you back, and it is a broken system. Mark Twain used to say, "I don't let schooling interfere with my education," and they're not the same thing.
Mhm.
Education and schooling are very different. Is there something arguable to have both of them? Absolutely. But in this lifetime, if we learn from children, yet again, children are applauded for failing at a young age, learning to walk. Great job. She almost did it. She stood up, she fell down. She stood up, she fell down. Oh my gosh. You don't say, "Oh, you fucking idiot, you're never going to learn how to walk." You know, but at one point, we change that perspective and start saying, "You're an idiot, you made a C on your test, go to your room."
Mm.
And this is a
Mm.
failure, or a cultural failure on our part, with our systems, and it's universal within universal schooling, that we do that. I think that's a huge problem. But all the greatest achievers in the world fail. And the biggest, best entrepreneurs ever in history, I study them for a living, have failed the worst and the most devastating, the most catastrophic, and got back up and done it. The stories go endlessly, from the founder of Honda to Elon Musk to Andrew Carnegie, to just keep going. I mean, Abraham Lincoln failed, lost every single election for like 20 years until he became the president. But the point is, look at our current president of the United States now. Look at all the bankruptcies, look at all the failures, look at all the businesses, look at all the whatever. He's a two-term president now.
Mhm.
So good, bad, or indifferent, regardless of what people think about each one of these people. But from the science of achievement, I don't know about the fulfilling lives they're living, but as achievers, they're super achievers, because in spite of failure, they persist. In
Mm.
spite of failure, they continue. And I think this is an attribute that can be trained if we start to look at failure as learning how to win, not as failure as we're told, "Oh, this is bad." It's no, I haven't won yet. Napoleon Hill in Think and Grow Rich calls this temporary defeat. And
Mm.
if you look at every failure from now on, when you have purpose, you have mission, you have empathy, you have reason, as temporary defeat. Temporary defeat. I'm not trying to win battles. I'm trying to win the war. And this is just a temporary defeat, no matter
Wow.
what it is. And what can I learn? And what can come from this? How can I prepare? And if you continue to live a life like that, and you have the privilege to live a life like that over decades, you're gonna create a very successful life. Fulfilling, I don't entirely know. I'm still working on it myself. I think I've made some strides. I think I've had some breakthroughs. I think I've been fortunate enough to have some nights where I feel a little bit more at peace. But this life is a never ending thing. It's not a, it's not a, it's a journey. I know that sounds corny, that people say that on Hallmark cards and things, but
Mm,
the word decision comes from the Latin word incision, which means to cut off. And so when you make a decision, you cut something off and you persist. If you're going after a goal, you burn the boats and you create
mm.
a desperate mode where you have no choice but to um, continue to move forward.
You mentioned like the failures, and I remember you said you were angry before as well. And I'm curious to know, as a successful entrepreneur, how did you become a better person in terms of how you used to be super angry, right? So how did you overcome that, and what certain rituals have you started, like what rituals are a must for you in order to do what you do and become who you are?
I appreciate the question. Anybody that's listening to this should go find Dr. Joe Dispenza.
Oh,
D-
yes.
D-
Becoming
Dr. Joe
supernatural. Yeah,
Dr.
that's
Joe is a global treasure.
mhm.
He's a treasure for mankind. So is the great Tony Robbins.
Have you done
And I
any
can tell you
of his courses yet? Because like his
which
events.
one,
'Cause
Dr. Joe?
I don't. Yeah, because I
I
read about
did
his book.
six. I did six 7-day retreats last year alone.
Wow. Yeah, because when you said the anger thing, like when
It
we saw
changed the
that,
fucking, it changed the game. I think you need Tony and Joe. Well, maybe I was so fucked up that I need both of them. You probably don't. But
no,
but Tony is a practical psychologist. He understands the human needs. He understands strategy. He understands business strategy, life strategy. And Dr. Joe has demystified the mystical. He's made science the language of mysticism.
mhm.
And by going there and understanding what happens with heart rate variability, with heart coherence, with brain coherence, the actual frequencies the body puts off. And I participated in a lot of these studies myself and, put
Wow.
on the rings and tested my own heart rate and tested my own brain waves, and I saw the data of myself change. I saw the changes, not just felt them, because feelings are liars. Feelings lie. How you feel is not always the truth. Um, it's a longer discussion, but in watching my own heart rate at a place where I was anxious or stressed or working these crazy entrepreneur hours and not sleeping for months or years at a time, basically, or what it felt like, and then watching the heart go into a place of coherence, and then all of a sudden feeling this liberation and being able to remember that feeling, and remember to go back to it and go back to it and go back to it, and then taking the strategies from Tony, how to set the goals, how to set the right intention, how to have the right intelligent strategies to go about building the things that I wanted in a meaningful way. Between those two works alone, and maybe a lifetime of failure, it took me about 20 years and counting to become an overnight success.
Wow, that's pretty powerful. And yeah, that I highly recommend all of Dr. Joe Dispenza's books. I've only read the Supernatural one, Become and Changing, or the one that it's becoming somebody totally
Breaking the
different.
habit of being you.
Yes, that one. Yeah, like it's
Yeah,
powerful.
there's nothing like the seminar. The books are great. I read them all too. I also have done transcendental meditation for over 10 years. It's how I started in meditation. It's what Ray Dalio recommended me to do. It was absolutely incredible. I finished all the advanced programs. I finished their most advanced program called the Cities, to become a Siddha, which is the highest ranking meditator. coursework you can do in the United States. And this has been a saving grace for me. It's been something that I can find equanimity, that I can physically, emotionally, calm my nervous system to a place, because meditation is not about zoning out and relaxing. Meditation is preparation for activity. So it's like an archer pulling a bow. So when you get that place, you get to the place, you settle your nervous system, you come to a place of balance and coherence, and then you pop up and go rip the day open.
What's your typical day look like for you? And what's something that you like? Do you meditate every day
Oh, of course. Between an hour to 2 hours every day.
in meditation?
Yes.
Wow, that's
For almost a
amazing.
decade.
Wow. I mean, obviously, you've built systems in place and you've got the right people in place. I could go on and ask you so many different questions, but I know that we're limited in time. I'd have to do another session with you. But like, that's fascinating because I always want to get into the mindset of successful people. So you're very inspiring, and I love the knowledge and the feedback. Do you have any regrets, like when you look back? Anything? Would you change anything that you've done in
Aside
terms
from
of?
not reading Think and Grow Rich sooner and not reading
Yeah.
it more. Well, uh, regret is a tough word. I would have told, if you would have asked me that question a few years ago, I would have given you a lot of things that I really regret.
Mm.
Um, but no, I don't. I don't really have a rear view mirror anymore. I'm looking forward. The past is done. The past is done. All you have is this present moment. And again, I know some of this sounds corny, but I really believe it. I really truly believe it, that the past is done. Um, and I think too many times in my life, I didn't do, if there's one real, I wouldn't say regret, but something that I would have done differently, and it still applies today. It's something that I still do, is not do the thing that I must do when I know I must do it.
Not do the thing that you must
Not
do.
do the thing. For example, it's, that you need to make that one call to your investor. You
Mm.
gotta, go to the gym. You're not supposed to eat junk. You must not do that. Yet we do, or we delay it and delay it, delay it, and we agonize going to the gym to the last minute. We agonize, having a tough conversation, or we, wait in some relationship issue. You wait too long to say you're sorry. You things that you must do, and eventually you're going to do. But that pain and angst and anxiety of delaying the inevitable is such a colossal waste of time, and is so damaging, that when you know you must do it, fucking do it at that moment.
Beautiful. And I want to know also with the future, like we spoke about looking back. What about looking in the future? What excites you? What do you really,
I'm so
pumped about?
optimistic about the future. I think that this is the greatest time in the history of mankind to be alive. I love the things that are happening with artificial intelligence. I
Mm.
love these technological innovations. Yes, there will be pain. Yes, there will be displacement. But I remind you that 100 years ago, 70% of Americans were in agriculture. Now 2% are in agriculture, and we feed the whole world. And what I mean by that is, when computers first were, invented, we were sure that all senior managers were going to lose their jobs. It didn't happen. Every time there's a new, electricity was invented, and everybody thought that this was the end of the world. It was the electric chair. Everybody's going to die. So this new phase, if we look at history as a repeating set of seasons, of even how debt cycles work, how humans evolve, how wars happen, how financial crises have happened, how global pandemics happen. There's a certain cadence and a rhythm to how history continues to evolve over thousands and thousands of years. And we are just now entering the fourth industrial revolution, where, based upon history, I believe that, we will have more productivity than we have pain. There will be more joy, more innovation, more health, more wellness, and more prosperity than there is pain. That the good will incredibly outweigh the bad.
I like that. Very optimistical. And, I believe that we create our own realities as well. So if we all do, everybody consciously does something good, like Dr. Joe Dispenza says, we can impact the whole world
You
on a
would love.
conscious
You
level.
should do whatever you can to go see Dr. Joe in person, Linda. I'm dead
Yeah, I will.
serious.
As soon
Yeah,
as he comes to
yeah,
Australia, I'm definitely going.
yeah. I mean, I flew all the way to Basel, Switzerland from Austin, Texas for my first seminar.
Oh,
Um,
wow. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was, yeah. So you can do it.
Okay. Awesome. Last question. How would you personally define success? What does success mean to you personally?
Well, I think success is synonymous with progress. And if I am progressing, albeit slow, maybe a few steps back, a few steps forward, if I feel that I am making progress towards a worthy goal, then I feel successful.
Beautiful. Where can people connect with you if they want to follow you? I know that you've got a huge social media following, so can you
Sure.
share?
Yeah, you can find us on Instagram at Rastegar, on TikTok at Ari Rastegar. You can simple Google search of my name will show you where we are on LinkedIn, on all the social networks. Our team does a phenomenal job of putting out things that we believe to be useful and helpful to people. You can go to rastegarcapital.com to learn about the investments that we have in the United States. We have for accredited investors and high net worth investors, we have opportunities along with public pension plans and insurance companies. You can buy my book, The Gift of Failure, on Amazon, or you can listen to it on Spotify or on Audible. And if you happen to get the book, I put a list of all these books, including Becoming Supernatural, in the end as recommended reading. So there's a very comprehensive list that I took a lot of time to write out, where even if my book doesn't inspire you, the books at the end hopefully will.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Ari. I appreciate your time and all that wisdom and knowledge.
Thank you, Linda.